Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We're going to get started in just a few seconds. I'm letting people take a moment to get onto the meeting. So if you just give me a couple more seconds, and once our numbers stop going up, I'll get the meeting started for you. Okay. Looks like we've got a lot of people on, so that's wonderful. So my name is Jennifer Dixon, and I work with EGLE in our Environmental Support Division. And tonight we're going to be here to talk about the process behind a couple of Enbridge Line 5 tunnel application submittals. The first one we're going to talk about tonight is the NPDES Permit number MI0060278. And the next one is going to be the resource submission number. And I'm not going to read that because it's very long. So hopefully if you're joining us via webinar, you'll be able to see that. And if you're joining us on the phone, we'll be sharing this information as well online afterwards. So a couple housekeeping things before we get started here. The first thing I want to do is just introduce really quickly the staff people that you're going to be hearing from tonight. The first person we're going to hear from is James Clift, and he works with our executive office. We're also going to be hearing from Tarek Buckmaster, and he's going to be talking about that first permit action. And the second person we're going to be hearing from is Joe Haas. I should have told them to wave to you when I said their name so you would know who it was, but you're going to be hearing from those people later. The other people that you're seeing on video right now are going to be people that are going to potentially be asking questions during our question and answer period. So we're going to be doing this information session where we're going to be presenting information about these two actions, and we're going to be talking about the process related to how that's going to happen moving forward. And you'll hear this said many, many times throughout the evening tonight, because we want to make sure that you know when the public comment periods are going to be happening and when those actual meetings are going to be happening down the road. And we have quite a few planned for you, so there's going to be lots of opportunity for actual public comment. So hopefully tonight you can get some information that'll prepare you to make those comments when the time is right for that. So we are going to be talking about when you can, or where, I'm sorry, you can find other information about these two permit actions. So staff will be talking about that. Once our presentations are done, we are going to open it up to question and answer, and I'll tell you how we're going to do that in just a second here. And then at the end of the evening, we're going to just let you know how you can reach our staff if you have further questions. So for the night tonight, all your lines are going to be muted. We are recording this meeting, and in a few days, we'll post this meeting on YouTube, and it will be closed captioned. So if you have friends and family that necessitate that or potentially need to view this in another language, YouTube does allow for some translation as well. The way we're going to do question and answer tonight is on your toolbar, you will see a Q&A, and you're just going to click on that. And if you have a question during the evening tonight, go ahead and type your question into that question and answer box. One thing to note is that if you feel more comfortable asking your question anonymously, just make sure that you check that box when you send your question in. Once we get to the question and answer section, we will be going through those questions, and our panelists will answer as many as they can in the time that we have available to us tonight. If we don't get to your questions, we'll try to respond to you directly. As long as you have registered with an email address that actually works, we'll be able to respond back to you directly on some of those as well. So without further ado, because we don't have a ton of time, I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to James Clift, and he's going to give you a little bit more information. But before you start talking, James, panelists, if you want to just go ahead and turn your video off, and we'll get ready to start the presentations.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate it. My name is James Clift. I am one of the deputy directors at the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Our goal tonight and over the next few months will be to keep you informed about the process and the opportunities you'll have to provide EGLE input as we process the Enbridge applications for the tunnel project. Tonight, we'll be limiting it to two aspects of that. What's in the application and what will the process be? So try to limit your questions to those two issues. What's in the application and what's the process? We'll be outlining the following opportunities you'll have down the road for both asking more questions and putting official public comment on the record. But tonight, it's just kind of try to get you some basic information But I want you to know there's also extensive background information contained on a state website dedicated to the Line 5 tunnel project. That's at Michigan.gov/Line 5. It includes information not only about the process here at EGLE, but the process going on at the Michigan Public Service Commission and any activities at the Michigan Strait Corridor Authority within our Michigan Department of Transportation. Let me just spend a minute on the Michigan Public Service Commission. They have started a proceeding before the commission under Public Act 16 of 1929. Under that act, the Michigan Public Service Commission authorizes proposals for energy infrastructure, including interstate crude oil and petroleum product pipelines. Exactly what kind of business Enbridge is involved in here. Their proceeding is completely separate from the permit applications that are before EGLE. Instructions on how to participate in the MPSC proceeding can be found on their website and on the Line 5 website, but that is totally independent to the work that EGLE will be doing. The website under the EGLE section includes a brief history of the project, frequently asked questions document, and our anticipated timelines for making decisions on the applications submitted by Enbridge. I want to thank you all for taking the time to participate this evening. And now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Tarek, who is from our Water Resources Division. And he's going to start walking us through the application submitted by Enbridge. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Again, my name is Tarek Buckmaster, and I supervise the Industrial and Stormwater Permits Unit and Permits section of the Water Resources Division. My unit is responsible for issuing surface water NPDES permits for all of the non-municipal wastewater treatment facilities in the state. This includes sand and gravel facilities, steam electric power generating facilities, groundwater remediations, and construction projects. First slide, please. So again, in today's presentation, we are going to be focusing on the NPDES permit processing timeline, the information that Enbridge has provided as part of their NPDES permit application, and then I'll also briefly cover the MiWaters online permitting system and public notice portal. That's the portal that you can utilize to access the NPDES permit application. And then also once a public notice is posted, you can review the application information and the draft permit. And again, we are planning on having some future meetings as part of the public notice. The proposed permit will be public noticed sometime during the period of September to October. We are also planning on holding 2 virtual informational public meetings, kind of a question and answer session. These will occur also in September and October. And then we will hold 2 virtual public hearings for formal comment submission also during September to October. At that time, once the permit is on public notice, we will accept questions and comments on the proposed draft permit. Next slide. As an overview, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES permit program, is a surface water discharge permitting process authorized under the Clean Water Act and NERIPA. The US EPA has authorized and delegated authority for NPDES permit issuance to Michigan. Any discharge within the state of Michigan is required to have an NPDES permit if it's going to the surface waters of the state. Next slide. The department has developed a permit processing timeline to assist in understanding our permitting process. Since Enbridge has submitted a complete application on May 28th, the department is required in statute to issue or come to a final permit decision by late November, 180 days after the complete issuance or the complete application date. The department has established a number of milestones down this timeline. As you can see, we've already had an informal meeting with the tribes in July. We're currently holding an informational meeting today. We have another meeting set with the tribes later this month. We're expecting a proposed permit decision to be released to the public sometime in September. We have planned 2 public meetings and 2 public hearings on the proposed decision during September, October. And we're expecting to have a deadline for public comment to be submitted by late October, with the final permit decision at the end of November. Next slide. As part of the NPDES permit application, Enbridge Energy has submitted information related to 2 phases of construction and post-construction. During the construction phase, Enbridge is requesting authorization to withdraw water from the Straits of Mackinac. This water will be used to excavate material removed from the tunnel. As part of the tunneling process, this material will be removed as a slurry and piped onshore. The construction wastewater will be treated for solids removal and will be required to meet NPDES permit requirements before it is discharged back into the Straits of Mackinac. Enbridge expects that some of this treated water will be recycled and reused in the tunneling process. During the post-construction process, once the tunnel is complete, Enbridge is only requesting authorization to discharge stormwater and groundwater that infiltrates into the tunnel system. This water will be routed to a basin on land for infiltration into the groundwater. We expect that there will be discharges from this system during peak wet weather events. Enbridge has also requested authorization to discharge hydrostatic pressure test water of the completed pipeline. This should be a short-term event and will also be discharged from one of the main outfalls. Next slide. As part of the application, Enbridge has requested authorization to have discharges from 3 primary outfalls. During the construction phase, the primary outfall will be outfall 1 on the south shore. This will authorize up to 5 million gallons per day of treated tunneling construction process wastewater, although Enbridge expects that this will average approximately 1.4 MGD per day. The second main outfall is outfall 3. They're also requesting authorization to discharge treated tunneling construction process wastewater, but at a lower volume of 1 million gallons per day. And Enbridge is expecting to discharge stormwater from 3 outfalls. During the post-construction project, once the tunnel is complete, Enbridge is requesting authorization to discharge a much lower volume of treated groundwater seepage from both outfalls 1 and 3, and then also is requesting to discharge peak stormwater flows from all 3 outfalls. And again, once the pipeline is completed and is undergoing a hydrostatic pressure test, Enbridge will be discharging water from outfall 001. Next slide. The next component is the MiWaters online permitting system. This is a system that the Water Resource Division uses for our permitting processes, permit compliance, spill reporting, and public information. It covers the NPDES permit program, the groundwater program, resource permitting, aquatic nuisance control, and other wastewater spill reporting and construction. Next slide. So once you enter the MiWaters portal, as you can see on the right side, there are a number of links, including the public notice search, the CSO, SSO discharge search, Sitemap Explorer, and then the ability to report spills and other unauthorized activities. If you click on the Sitemap Explorer, next slide, it'll show you a map of Michigan with a number of locations. You can limit the locations identified by entering in a search bar. You can enter Enbridge Energy Line 5. Next slide. And then the search results, you can scroll down and select Enbridge Energy Line 5 Straits of Mackinac. Click on that. Next slide. And you will have a link available on the bottom of that. It should show more information. Once you click on that, you'll have a number of different options on that screen. One of the options is documents. You can click on that, or you can use this link that will take you directly to this page. Next. And then you'll have a list. Right now there's 131 documents associated with this site for both the NPDES permit application and the resource application. So there's a few different ways you can limit your search. One way is to enter the submission number identified on the slide. Under the description tab, you can also enter NPDES under the file tab or do other searches as available. Next slide. And again, right now we only have the application information available on the site for Enbridge Energy, the Tunnel Line 5 project. In September, we expect that the public notice will be posted, which includes information on the draft permit and support documents. Until that time, there's also information available on the Line 5 website. That's all I have for you today. Thank you.
All right, Joe, it's over to you now.
All right, thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks to Tarek for doing a lot of the work ahead of me with laying out the MiWaters process. I'm not intending on repeating that material, but it also, much of that would apply if you're searching for a resource permit as well. This is our resource submission number. Well, let me start first by saying I'm Joseph Haas. I'm a supervisor with Cadillac and Gaylord Resource Programs for Water Resources Division. My responsibility includes administering environmental regulatory programs, covering wetlands, inland lakes and streams, floodplains, Great Lakes, coastal resources under NERIPA. Permitting and compliance review in the field is where my focus really is. And Enbridge happens to fall into at least half of Enbridge is in our turf. So we're covering the permit review for that and have been for a number of years. Next slide. So to get into the resource program discussion today, I intend to talk about the authorities that apply to the tunnel and its associated infrastructure, the timeline for resource permitting, the resource application review. There is also federal jurisdiction. I see a question already in the box about federal authority, and we'll talk about that very briefly. And MiWaters portal, database, and the public notice portal, how to properly navigate that to view the materials that have been submitted and provide us with public comments into MiWaters. We do have future meetings planned. Some of that's throwing me. The public notice of the tunnel application, July 31st. That seems to be an error to me, but we are planning for virtual information public meetings in September and October, and virtual public hearings as well. We're working right now to lock those down. As soon as we have those dates set, we will advise. There'll be notices going out to the public. The public comment period for this resource program permit application is open right now. You can go into MiWaters and comment presently. That public notice started the Friday of last week. It went out late. It was not intended to be going out at 6:30 on a Friday night. We weren't trying to hide it. That was when we were done with it. We were really trying to work to get it done, and it was done. So we decided we would go ahead and publish that. So it is out. Next slide. So the authorities that are going to oversee the tunnel, that are going to apply, are clearly Part 303, Wetlands Protection Act, and Part 325, Great Lakes Protection. So the work as proposed by Enbridge falls under these two statutory authorities that we oversee. Next slide. So the permit timeline, very similar to NPDES permitting, some slight differences in the dates. So we had received materials from Enbridge and bounced a correction request back and forth, determined that the materials submitted were complete and satisfactory to continue processing or initiate processing on June 8th. So that's the start of our timeline. We did have the tribal meeting on July 1st, and this informational meeting we're having right now, August 6th. So consultation is planned. And the public meetings and hearings will be forthcoming as far as scheduling dates. Our deadline for a final permit decision on this, 180 days from the permit completion date, I think is the first week of December. Next slide. And our application review. So on the resource side, what we're really looking at is wetland impacts that are proposed on the North Shore, on Point La Barbe, if you're familiar with the Straits of Mackinac and particularly the Upper Peninsula. So on the South Shore facility, there really are no wetland impacts that would be expected or anticipated from the activities that have been proposed. That's the area that's near McGulpin Point, the lighthouse you might be familiar with there, and Enbridge's valve yard that's fenced in. If you've been to that location, you can't miss that structure. That is really a rather urbanized area. There's no regulated features as far as wetland goes on the south side. So Point La Barbe, they're proposing to dredge and fill in regulated wetlands, which in this instance are certainly directly associated with Lake Michigan and the Straits. And that part of that is widening the boulevard drive that comes in from the east, just for access for the larger trucks that would be needed for the from the portal when they are removing the machine and for access to the new facility. They will also be installing 2 shoreline outfall structures on this North Shore. If you're familiar with the area, one is at the unimproved boat launch, and then the other is to the west of that, both on that south shore of Point La Barbe. And then the proposed Great Lakes impacts. So they're constructing a tunnel beneath Lake Michigan, effectively in the Straits, from McGulpin Point, where they intend to start in the lower peninsula, across the Straits into Point La Barbe. All this work is beneath the Straits of Mackinac, within Great Lakes bottomlands. So they will also be constructing 2 water intake structures in the Straits. So one on each side. One on the north side that's going to be out off the shoreline. I think it'll be marked by, I think the intent is to be marked by a buoy. And then another one on the south side with an intake structure as well as a single discharge pipe on that south side. And again, these are proposed to be removed upon completion, but the completion is isn't a firm date, right? They're going to try and do this as swiftly and promptly as possible. The proposition is a 5-year construction timeframe. But in any case, these are structures that are going to be in the water on Great Lakes bottomlands for over a year, without a doubt. So we're requiring a permit review for that. Next slide. And here's where we can talk about some federal jurisdiction. So this is dual jurisdiction waters, navigable waters here, what's called Section 10. Under the Army Corps of Engineers, the federal authority comes in with the Rivers and Harbors Act, Section 10. And Section 404, a Clean Water Act. The Corps of Engineers also has authority over the wetlands here, and the dredging, any of the construction work. The Corps of Engineers has had a public notice. Many of you may be aware of that. The comment period has since closed. I think it closed on July 14th. I think they did offer an extension to that as well. So it was open, I think they had a 40-day extension. So it was open for a number of days more than they typically would have a public comment period. And then the state authority, again, that overlaps with federal. The Corps of Engineers typically needs to wait for our Section 401 Clean Water Act certification. So we would certify that the activities proposed comply with the effluent limitations and the state water quality standards. Also, the CZM, Coastal Zone Management Certification, would be required because this is in a designated coastal zone. Next slide.
Hey, Joe, this is Jennifer, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I noticed that we had a question about the speaker picture and the size of the slideshow. So I just wanted to address that in case people aren't quite used to Zoom. A lot of times what happens is it's in the view that you're looking at. So you'll see your presentation on the left-hand side and then your picture of whoever talking on the right-hand side. In between that, there's like a little gray tab. And if you pull it to the right, grab it and pull it with your mouse and pull it to the right, you'll reduce reduce Joe to very tiny, because that's probably all you need for him right now. And you should be able to see the presentation a little bit bigger. So I hope that's helpful. If it's not, I apologize. We'll try to do a little bit better job of addressing some of those things from the get-go. So Joe, I apologize for that. Go ahead and I will advance your slide for you.
Yeah, no worries. I did see that question as well, but I was hoping it was addressed. I wouldn't want to be looking at me large and slides small. You want the other way around here. So, so the public notice, you can see this application and submit comments by going to this link. And I know it's a lot to write down, but this will be available after our presentation. And what you'd want to do is just copy and paste that MiWaters public notice posting link into your web browser, and it'll take you right to the page where you would have three options, three tabs at the top. And then the second link there is James Clift mentioned the website for line 5. So that's just the link that he mentioned, the Michigan.gov/line 5. So next slide, please. So this is the page that that web link would take you to for the public notice that's currently out. So if you go to that link, paste it in your, take that link and paste it into your web browser, push return, and it'll take you to this page. This is available to anybody. You don't need a MiWaters account to look at this, to call up the documents, or to add a comment. This is just a public-facing part of the database. So this is actually showing the details part of the page. You can see it's got the blue bar beneath the word details in the upper left. And so that's some of the details associated with this application as we have received it. And then if you click on Documents, the next tab that's in the middle, that would allow you to view all the public notice documents that are associated with this public notice. It's not going to be everything that Enbridge provided us with this application. That's available in the MiWaters file itself, but this is the material that is attached specifically to this public notice. So there's three documents under that tab. There's the application itself that Enbridge submitted. And some of that, if you look at that, the first few pages are kind of something you want to maybe move through quickly, because it's a lot of directions and such. You'll see when you get into the meat and bones of the application itself, when you start seeing Enbridge submitted information. And so the application's available under that Documents tab, as well as the public notice document itself. That's about a 2-page document that includes a description of the proposal, and it also includes the listing of the people that were copied, the agencies that were copied, and such. And I'm thinking, did I name all three? So there's the application, the public notice documents, and what's the third thing? The public notice documents and the public notice itself. I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking on it, but it's too obvious. So there's the 2-page public notice itself, the documents associated with that. That includes the drawings, the plan view drawings, the tunnel drawings, the cross section. It does not include the geotechnical report. That's a 3,000-page document that is available. I think it's linked or copied through the page, through the State of Michigan line 5 page. I think the page that James Clift discussed has a link on it. There's another page, Great Lakes page, that also has it. It's not easy to transfer a document that large, so it's not in our MiWaters. Well, it is in MiWaters, I think, but it's not in this particular public notice. And then click on Add a Comment. You want to talk, speak to this particular application. That is where we would like you to add your comments. This is not a democratic process, right? It's not everybody voted against this, so we're not going to permit it. It's not how the process functions. It's a process where we want comments that are well thought out, that describe your specific concerns, and particularly if you have firsthand knowledge of the resources out here, that's helpful. If you can comment on the specifics of the site. If we get, a lot of note cards that simply say we're against the project, that's it's noted, and it's certainly part of the public comment, but it doesn't necessarily sway our decision making. Our decision making is built into the statutes that we're working with, and if something is permittable according to the statute, you know, that's how we would generally move. If it's something, if we need more information because we find good comments have added to the inquiry, we can certainly ask Enbridge for more information, ask them to amend the application. So next slide, please. That's it.
All right, thanks a lot, Joe. So I appreciate you guys both giving those short presentations on what we're here to talk to tonight. We are to the question and answer section of the evening. So we do have some questions, which is great. Sorry, I didn't turn my video back on. So panelists, if you want to turn your videos back on so we can get ready for that. Just a couple of housekeeping things too before we get to the Q&A. So one of the things that I noticed, and I don't normally work with our water resources division, I normally do air quality stuff. And one of the things that happens when we do these presentations is we gave you a lot of really long links, and we know that this is an issue with the way our web works. So for anybody who registered for the meeting tonight and provided a usable email address, you will get a follow-up email about this. That email will include all of the links we addressed tonight. Those will be right in that email, so it'll be easy access for you. They'll be identified as to where they are pointing. You'll also get a PDF version of the slides that we're using this evening. And there was another thing too, we'll give you the contact information from folks. Now, if you called in only, because we do have some folks just on the phone tonight, I know you can't see the presentation necessarily right now. If you want to provide your email address to either Joe or Tarek afterwards, and I'll read their email addresses aloud, or obviously they're probably available on Google fairly easily, but if you want to give us a contact, we can always forward that information to you as well. We want to make sure that everybody's getting the information that they need. So as far as question and answer right now, some people have figured out definitely how to ask some questions. So we have some in the question box. I'm going to go through those and I'll try to address them to staff people that should be answering them. Staff, if you are on the panel and you haven't been introduced already, so if you're not Tarek or Joe or James, if you can just introduce yourself prior to speaking and give us an idea of what it is you do for EGLE, just to kind of identify yourself a little bit more. Okay, first question. So this question is going to be going, I think, to Tarek, but I could be wrong. Like I said, you guys will have to bear with me a little bit because I'm more used to air quality, but it says, does EGLE plan to conduct a thorough examination of the geology of the tunnel construction, whether it will support a massive boring project, and if it will sustain a pipeline over 99 years? And if so, what qualifications does EGLE have to conduct this review?
Yeah, I think that's not necessarily Tarek.
Okay, sorry about that, Joe.
I mean, I'd like to hear what Tarek might say about it, but we'd be putting him on the spot. It's more of a question for the resource side. We do know that we have HT Engineering, which is a gentleman, Dan Cooper, who has been working for the state. I'm not sure off the cuff who's paying Dan Cooper, you know, but he is one of the very few pipeline engineers that has not worked with Enbridge, I should say, that doesn't have a conflict of interest, right? It's a rather small cadre of specialized engineers that work in that industry. And Dan is a pipeline guy, not a tunneling guy necessarily. So as far as the geotechnical side, there's another gentleman, Mike Mooney, who is a tunnel boring expert. I think, I know Colorado, but I might get it wrong. It's Colorado State University. Michael will catch me on this if I say it wrong, but in any case, Mike is one of the world's experts in tunnel boring and has worked across the globe. And he's also, I think, contracted maybe with Department of Transportation. I don't believe EGLE is paying for either of these professional consultants, but they are reviewing the materials and familiar with the site, have been working with the proposals as they've been developed from the onset. Since the agreements, they were engaged with the 2018 agreements. with the Snyder administration. So I think the simple answer is yes.
Okay. Well,
I know, go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just going to say, I mean, some of these questions are going to probably be out of the scope of what we're here to talk about tonight. And I should have mentioned that if I do read a question and we feel like it's a little bit beyond what we're here to talk about, because we really want to focus on this process, that we can always respond back to questioners directly. So as long as you didn't ask anonymously, we can respond back to you directly. So panelists, if you're feeling like, you know, we really don't have anyone available right now to answer these questions, then just let me know that. And I apologize for not being better prepared in that aspect from the get-go. But let's go into the next questions.
Really quick. Yeah,
Go ahead, James. Yep.
The state is exploring if it needs additional expertise, contracting for it. So to the extent that we don't think that we have the expertise, we are looking at some other options in that regard.
So would this go along too with that next question about the geology study done by a third party? Is that sort of in that same vein?
It is.
So if you're, I don't know if you're seeing this question, James, but it says, will there be a geology study done by a third party and a study that maps what underlies the bottomlands and the easement? So is that sort of in that same bucket?
Again, I guess I'll start. Joe may continue. Enbridge has conducted a geology study. Those experts will be reviewing the work Enbridge has done. You know, I don't expect that we'll have other people out there doing borings in the states, but they will be reviewing the work that has been conducted on Enbridge's behalf, is my understanding.
Okay, wonderful. So this is actually a question maybe for me and James, which, so I don't, someone knew I was going to be here, I guess. So this question is about the public comment periods in general. So the question is, this is an extensive permit for the public to review and comment on. Thorough and comprehensive review by the public to get adequate and appropriate comments by the public is not possible in a month. Can EGLE, actually this is the wrong one, this is going to be for you guys, sorry. Can and will EGLE consider an extension of the public comment period to allow for the most effective public comment? So Joe, I know your permit is already open for comment, so maybe you could speak to that, and then if you could pass it on to Tarek so that he could speak to his.
Yeah, so we went into this with the concept to maximize all of the timeframes for public comments. We are going to take and allow as much time as we can for public comment. So I'm trying to think of the timeline. So when we have that final public hearing, there's 10 days that follow that before the public comment period would close. So that puts our final public comments sometime in October, August at the earliest, at the end of August. And we can certainly ask Enbridge for extensions to that. But at some point we do have to stop accepting public comments because we've got to review them. And with the expected the sheer number of comments that we anticipate receiving, we've got to make sure we have time to review them before our decision deadline in early December.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but you said August, but I think you meant October, November, based on the timeline that you showed. It would be going into the end of October at least, not the end of August. Is that correct? Because you just opened comment on July 31st. So is that, am I misunderstanding your timeline? I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
I'm thinking the timeline is maybe a little bit off.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's going to, our last, as we were discussing today, earlier today, offline obviously, we talked about the last public hearing, trying to schedule that in the last one being August. So that kind of futzed with my timeline a little bit, right?
Okay.
So if that's the case, if we have the last public hearing the first week of August, then we generally would allow 10 days after that before we close that comment period.
And you're saying August, but do you mean October? Because I'm looking at your timeline right now.
I mean August, because
just making sure, because we've got public meetings and hearings on proposed decisions in September and October on this timeline. So I just want to make sure that
I think this should say August.
Okay. We'll clarify that and we'll get that information to folks too, just to make sure that
and it's dictated really by when that last public hearing is. That's you know, and also if, you know, we could, if we do agree that the public is dissatisfied with the amount of time, we can go back to Enbridge and ask them, hey, can we extend the time frame? If they agree to that, then it's possible.
Okay. So Tarek, would you like to speak about yours?
Yes. So typically we're required to have a 30-day public notice period for any permit decision. And we expect that that's going to start sometime in September. We've also scheduled the public meetings and the public hearings, so there's additional time for comments or questions to be, you know, brought up from the public. And so looking at having those public meetings, public hearings, and closing out the comment period from those, we're looking already at like about a 60-day period for public comment. So we've effectively extended that 30-day comment period already just with the scheduling of the meetings and the hearings. But, you know, as Joe said, if we do get, if we make a determination that that's not sufficient, you know, we could possibly extend that comment period at a later date.
Okay, thank you. So this is a question I was kind of looking at that was more related to something that I can answer just based on how will public information meetings and hearings be conducted to ensure all the public are included. So with COVID increasing, online meetings aren't sufficient, and most impacted Northern Michigan have significant issues with broadband and internet access. So we understand at EGLE that this is a big deal for people. We've looked at the different platforms that we have available to us right now, and obviously we're a little bit limited and we're still working within the Open Meetings Act that the governor has set out for us. We've just recently got Zoom, which I know isn't perfect, but it does allow a lot more capability for people to interact from a public standpoint. When we do the public hearings, we will be allowing for that call-in number for folks who don't have very good internet service or any internet service at all. And they will be allowed to speak verbally by raising their hand. We're not offering that up this evening, but during the actual public hearings for comments on the record, that will be available. So we're opening it up to as many possibilities as we can with that. Obviously, Joe and Tarek both spoke about other ways that you can submit comment. So we don't want people to think that they're only limited to doing it that way. If for some reason you know someone who can't use the internet, can't get to MiWaters, you can have them just give Joe or Tarek a call, and I'm sure we can figure out another way to get your comment. Obviously, your comments can be, maybe I'm lying, that they can be received by mail as well. Yes. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, understanding that it is not a perfect world right now that we're working in, and we would much rather be face-to-face with all of you at the same time as that. So probably not the answer that you wanted. And, you know, once we are allowed to do live meetings and hearings again, we're going to be more than happy to do that as well. So a question for you, Tarek, because this is about NPDES. So it says, how is the NPDES permit related to the resource permit? The Great Lakes coastal wetlands for discharge are the most pristine in Lake Michigan and Huron, according to the Great Lakes Wetlands Consortium. So I was actually wondering that same thing. Specifically, do you have to have one to have the other, or do you have to wait till both of them are approved in some way, shape, or form before Enbridge can move forward with this? So Tarek, if you want to kind of start talking about that, and if Joe has something to add, that'd be great.
Okay. For a new facility, a new discharge, they're required to comply with any state requirements for discharge, construction, location. And so it's just the interaction of all of that. So the NPDES permit program is specific to a surface water discharge. If they were going to only have a groundwater discharge, they would need a groundwater discharge permit. If they weren't going to have a surface water discharge, they wouldn't need an NPDES permit, would likely only be getting a resource permit. So it just depends on what areas are being affected and determining what permits are required for that particular site. You know, and we do a site evaluation for any potential discharge. So we're, you know, ensuring that water quality standards are being protected. You know, we do an evaluation for threatened and endangered species. And, you know, and looking at the impact of this facility, the treatment capabilities, looking at the impacts on water quality, looking at local impacts, and that's all part of our evaluation. Joe, if there's anything else you'd like to add, go ahead.
No, I think we recognize the high quality of the straits. That's part of its, you know, its attraction to the the seasonal tourism and the value to natural resources. That's not lost on us.
So this question would go to you as well, Tarek. The question is there an alternatives analysis required for the NPDES discharges?
Yes, for any newer increased use, facilities needs to comply with the anti-degradation demonstration requirements in Rule 1098. And Enbridge has submitted an anti-degradation demonstration. As part of that, they do an evaluation of alternatives to the discharge. They looked at recirculation, a municipal discharge, pumping and hauling, doing a groundwater or ground well, or an injection well discharge. So that was part of the analysis in the application.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
I'm
Jeff,
not sure. Yeah, go ahead, Luis. Did you have something?
I was looking at the questions, and I think we need to clarify the timeline for the public notice, comments, and the opportunity that the public will have to provide comments. So let's just.
Sure. Can you introduce yourself first, Luis, and just tell everybody who you are and what your role is? I apologize.
No, I will do so. Luis Aldivia here. I work in the Water Resources Division. I am the one of the managers that handle the field coordination. I happen to be involved with the Lakes Michigan's and Superior watersheds, so this is part of my role. So I wanted to briefly kind of go back to where we are with the process. So the public notice for the resource application was issued on Friday, July 31st, so about a week ago. The public notice has a 50-day timeline. So the public right now has an opportunity to go to the MiWaters link that Joe showed and go through the application process, go through the public notice, and provide comments into the portal, the MiWaters portal, for the next 40 days or so, so until the middle of September. So that's number one. For the resource application, then we are planning to have 2 public information meetings, and then sometime in September, middle to late September, and then 2 public hearings, different dates, different times. The last public hearing, let's just say, let's pick a day here, end of September. Let's just say that that's the last public hearing that for the resource application. Then generally we will have 10 additional days from the date of the last public hearing for additional comments to come in. So that will put us into through the month of September to receive comments, and possibly early October to, say give and take the first weekend into October. So that's when we are looking for the process to accepting public comments that we're planning at the moment. Again, Tarek and Joe talked about some additional timing possibly, but that's not has been discussed yet. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I think there was some confusion on the timing of the public comments.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we can take a look at that timeline too that was in the presentation. Just make sure that it aligns with what we're talking about before we share that. We want to make sure we're sharing with you guys an accurate timeline too, so that you can see it visually. So I appreciate that, Luis. Joe, this question is going to go to you. It says, will WRD conduct an EIS as part of the resource permit evaluation? And if not, why not?
We haven't determined that we were. In my experience, we've not typically done that.
Thank you for that. All right. So I think this one would be for you too, Joe. Is EGLE looking at the impacts to T and E species, which could be significant, as well as the impacts to migratory birds?
Yeah, I don't know that I would describe T&E impacts as being significant here, but we certainly are aware of the threatened and endangered species that are on site. So there's dwarf flake iris, which is, it's largely plants. There's dwarf flake iris and Houghton's goldenrod, known to be all across the Point La Barbe area. These are plants that really thrive in this disturbed area. They actually, you'll find dwarf flake iris in the driveway out there, in the roadway and the shoulder. And so, yeah, the plan includes relocating some, and the initial plan from Enbridge was to take some to a nursery and then bring them back when the work is completed and replant them. This is also part of the federal authority under the Section 7 review. And so the Army Corps of Engineers defers to Fish and Wildlife Service for that review, and they are undergoing that biological assessment out there and reviewing the T&E species for appropriate handling as well. So between the state and the Fish and Wildlife Service, we're both looking at that.
Okay, great. Well, and this question is going for you too, so don't mute your mic right now. It says, Enbridge's permit application stated it would be a 3-year construction period, and you had mentioned 5. Do you know which is accurate? And I don't remember, and I apologize, what you did say there. Do you know which one is?
I just think this is a complicated system, and it's a complicated project. If they could do it in 3 years, that would probably be awesome, right? The faster, the better for the resource to get the, if it's permittable, if we get to that point. So 3, 5, 7. I've heard a lot of different time frames discussed in different negotiations. So I think you want to propose the most ambitious one possible and shoot for that, try for that.
Sure. And this one goes to you as well. This is that federal authority type of interaction. And it says, with the joint permitting authority between USACE and EGLE, what happens if one entity approves a permit request and the other declines them? Also, the USACE application is different from the EGLE application. So how will these applications be reconciled?
Yeah, I'm not sure they necessarily have to be reconciled. We have different authorities. The feds have different regulations than the state. We do cover, the state does have some Clean Water Act authorities that do also direct the Corps of Engineers, but the state has we have our own regulations under 325 and 303. So there's a little bit of difference there.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that answered the whole question or not.
Well, I think one of the parts of it was, what if one gets approved and the other one doesn't? Does that matter in the scheme of things as far as this goes?
It can happen. It's happened in the past. It's usually it's the state doesn't issue and the feds do. We try and resolve those problems in those situations, and it's the exception. I don't know if anybody else has a comment on that or any more experience than I do on that. Maybe Luis does.
No, the Army Corps, is this regarding the threatened and endangered species or the Army Corps permitting process?
So the permitting process, if one entity issues a permit and the other does not.
Yeah, generally speaking, there's coordination between the two agencies, but the way the process works is under the agreement that the state of Michigan has with the Army Corps, the federal agencies. Even though they may have begun the process before the state of Michigan, they will want to have the state make an action before the federal agencies will make the final decision. So that's generally how the process works. throughout that process, even though we will make an independent decision, there will be certainly coordination between and consultation between the Army Corps in this case and the state of Michigan.
Okay, thank you. So this one's going to go to Tarek, I think. And Tarek, again, if I'm wrong on this, please pass it to the right person. So this question says, on the matter of controlling suspended solids and color as a pollutant from the discharge of hydrostatic test water, has EGLE or Enbridge considered an internal discharge point and requirement to subject this particular stream of wastewater with a filter to remove fine iron particles and to reduce the color discharge from this particular source? So I know that's a long question, but did I send it to the right person at least? And you have to unmute yourself or we won't be able to hear you. Okay, good. Score.
Yes, so you know, we do include requirements in the permit to be protective of water quality standards. So if we have concerns about controlling suspended solids or color, those requirements would be included in the permit. We typically don't see any concerns with color. They're going to be withdrawing from the Straits of Mackinac again and testing the pipeline, and they're required to make sure that they're meeting the requirements of the hydrostatic freshwater general permit, which will be included in this individual permit. And so we would expect that they would be complying with water quality standards in the discharge. And then also there was another question too about the groundwater seepage system.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead if you want to answer that one.
Just answer that one also.
Yeah.
They're proposing on having a oil and grease separator.
Tarek, I'm sorry, but I thought you might read the question. Let me read the question so everybody knows what you're answering, if you don't mind. Yep. No, that's no problem. Okay, so the question that Tarek's going to answer right now is, does the groundwater seepage system have the ability to handle pipeline hydrocarbon leaks after the facility is in operation? And does the treatment system for the groundwater seepage system have the capability to operate in an oil water separation mode during such an eventuality?
So yes, their groundwater seepage system is going to have the capability of removing oil and grease. That is something that they're including in the design. However, we don't authorize spills or leaks as part of the NPDES permit. So there's other requirements on them for that particular discharge, but they do have an oil and grease, oil and water separator as part of that treatment system.
Thank you for answering that. I appreciate it. There's a couple comments in here, Joe, about talking about what comments are going to be acceptable. So people will appreciate that. And I just wanted to put that out there. We only have a couple more minutes here. If I'm looking at my clock, it's 6:58 and the meeting was set to go till 7. We do have quite a few more questions. I know we had talked about, if we can't get to them tonight, we would address them specifically to you, but there might be a couple other ones in here that we can get to tonight. I just wanna, I don't know if Joe or Tarek, is there anyone specifically that you wanna make sure that we answer this evening related to the process that we're talking about that you saw in the Q&A? And if you can just take a look at that, we'll have Joe maybe answer one more. And then Tarek, I don't know if there's one more that you might want to answer specifically to. We've gotten quite a few, so these are really good questions. This is a good one that I think maybe we could answer. And I'm not sure who should answer this, but I think it's one of those things that kind of applies to both. And the question is, does the permitting include looking at a long-term study of potential environmental harm? And what would that look like? Can you talk a little bit about that, if there is such a thing integrated in either one of these permit applications?
I'm not sure we have a whole lot to say about the long, like doing a long-term study. That's not something that we would typically require. I think that's part of our review would be, are there, the environmental impacts, is the permit, would a permit be in the public interest? That sort of a question. Mm-hmm. Will the project adversely affect public trust or riparian rights? Will it impair or destroy waters or other natural resources? is a permit required? Or would there be an unacceptable disruption to aquatic resources? These are sort of the bullet points from the statutes.
Yep.
But we generally do not do like a long-term study. You know, the tunnel is, you know, going to be beneath the Straits of Mackinac. It's going to be removed from the water. So, you know, aquatic resources, I think there's a presumption aquatic resources would not be disrupted by the presence of this tunnel. Certainly the NPDES side needs to be addressed, and that's, you know, that's occurring. But just for an example.
So Tarek, did you have anything to add on that?
Actually, I want to jump to a question
Yeah,
again, which I think is critical here. And
sure, go ahead, James. Yeah.
what is the difference between a public meeting and a public hearing? And we've
Sure.
heard that tonight about the fact that on both sides of this application, our intention is to have 2 public meetings and 2 public hearings. The public meetings will be more informational, like this one, where we'll talk, you know, about the applications, and on the NPDES side, it will be talking about the proposed decision. So it will get into a little bit more detail. People will be able to ask questions and explore further. The public hearings is where those will be devoted entirely to taking public comment from the public on either the application on the resource side or the decision on the NPDES side. So that's where we'll be taking formal public comments from the public.
Yeah, that's great, because I was actually going to end with that question as well. So I really appreciate that you took that on. So we are out of time, and I know not everyone got their questions answered. So we really appreciate your patience tonight in dealing with this and spending your night with us. So we do greatly appreciate that. I wanted to make sure I shared Joe and Tarek's contact information in case you need it. So that's on the screen right now. And again, I understand that some people are calling in. So what I want to do is just, I'm going to put Tarek and Joe's email addresses out there, and I'm just going to read them out loud. So if you are on the phone and you want to jot these down really quickly, that would be great. And I spelled, so I've got Tarek first, and his last, or his email address is buskmasterT1@Michigan.gov. So bear with
Jennifer,
me. Yes.
Sorry, just to interrupt
Is
you.
it spelled wrong?
Yes,
Okay,
it's
I
spelled
thought it
wrong.
was. I'm sorry. I was like, I thought it's Buckmaster. That was probably my bad. I apologize. So I'll say it right. How about that? And then we'll correct it before we send it out. So it's B as in boy, U as in umbrella, C as in cat. Nod your head if that's right. Yes. K as in kick, M as in Mary, A as in apple, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, E as in elephant, R as in red, T as in Tom again, and then the number 1. So Buckmaster T1@Michigan, all spelled out, .gov. Joe's is way easier. So his email address is haasj1@Michigan.gov, and that's H as in ham, A as in apple, A as in apple, S as in Sam, J as in Joe or Jennifer, and then the number 1@Michigan, all spelled out, .gov as in government. And again, I'll make sure that we correct that before we send this out to all of you. So again, we want to thank you for spending your time with us tonight. Again, we will share the recording of the meeting this evening. We'll send that out in an email to anybody who registered with us and supplied their email address. If you didn't and you want to send Joe or Tarek a quick note just saying, hey, can you share this information with me? We're more than happy to do that for you. We want to make sure that you have everything that you need to make a comment on the record if that's what you would like to do. So again, greatly appreciate you guys spending your time with us tonight, and we'll get you the rest of the information on when the further meetings and the public hearings will be held so that you can attend those as well. So thanks a lot and have a great night.